And now we're excited to have Peter Pisters of UT MD Anderson Cancer Center, the best cancer center in the world. But before we introduce Peter, I want you to take a look at a video that our team produced.
What does it take to be the nation's #1 cancer center? It takes researchers whose breakthroughs become groundbreaking treatments. Researchers such as Dr. Jim Allison, who was awarded the 2018 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for discovering a new way to attack cancer using the immune system, and thousands of other scientists who have been recognized nationally for extraordinary achievements in science, engineering, and medicine, whose work is supported by significant investments in research, $973 million last year alone. It takes the largest cancer trials program in the world. More than 1,400 clinical trials were underway just last year. Clinical trials that have resulted in new drugs and drug combinations, new surgical procedures and devices, and more effective ways to apply existing treatments. Over the last decade, MD Anderson was involved in the development of more than 56% of all the cancer drugs approved by the FDA for clinical use. Most of all, it takes a commitment to providing top-quality, compassionate patient care. Since opening in 1941, 1.6 million patients have turned to MD Anderson for that care, including more than 150,000 patients last year. Care that is provided by some of the best specialists and healthcare providers around, and delivered during more than 1 million outpatient clinic visits, treatments, and procedures conducted each year. Doctors at MD Anderson treat more rare cancers in a single day than most physicians see in a lifetime. MD Anderson has more full-time registered nurses and advanced oncology practice providers than any hospital in Texas, and is one of only about 20 hospitals nationwide to have been recognized 5 times with the highest designation from the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Magnet Program, considered the gold standard of nursing excellence. That commitment to care goes beyond medical treatment. MD Anderson offers comprehensive support programs for patients and their families, ranging from a private school to camps to art projects. Being the best means working to prevent cancer as well as treat it, and preparing the next generation of healthcare providers and researchers who will carry this critical effort forward. Each year, more than 1,500 clinical residents and fellows receive specialized training in more than 70 programs at MD Anderson. Multiple centers and divisions within MD Anderson are devoted to researching possible causes of cancer and developing new screening exams and risk reduction strategies. As part of their efforts to end tobacco use, one of the leading causes of cancer, MD Anderson experts provided clinical and scientific resources in support of the Texas legislature's decision to raise the minimum legal sale age for all tobacco products. MD Anderson leaders also worked with Texas legislators to prohibit young teens from using tanning beds after researchers found the risk of melanoma increases by 85% for people who start indoor tanning before the age of 18. Through its education programs and network of affiliates, MD Anderson influences the cancer care for 1/3 of the world's population. MD Anderson's people are its greatest asset, and the institution is nationally recognized as a best place to work and a top employer for women, diversity, and more. What does it take to be the top cancer center in the nation? Research, clinical trials, discoveries, patient care and support, education, and talented people, all with an unwavering commitment to a common mission: to eliminate cancer in Texas, the nation, and the world.
So the job of running the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center is a leadership job like few others anywhere. The stakes couldn't be higher. The eyes and the hopes of not only Texas, but the world rest on MD Anderson Cancer Center. It's an incredibly complex organization, science intensive, patient intensive, employee intensive, capital intensive, government intensive. It's intense. It's not for the faint of heart. It takes a special kind of leader. And the universe of people who can do this job well is incredibly small. Peter Pisters has the tangible qualities and the intangible qualities required to lift MD Anderson to new heights. So the tangibles, he's a renowned cancer surgeon, researcher, professor, and hospital administrator who understands MD Anderson extremely well, having spent 20 years on the faculty and in leadership positions before he came back as president. He was educated at the School of Medicine at the University of Western Ontario in Canada, and then had a master's degree in healthcare administration from the Harvard School of Public Health. Has done postgraduate work at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, where he was the chief administrative fellow. But equally important, and I've witnessed this over the last 2.5 years in many ways, that running an organization as complex as MD Anderson, the intangible aspects of leadership, which Peter consistently demonstrates, are critical. They face cultural issues, and Peter has tackled those issues head on with great energy, respect, and inclusiveness. He embodies the qualities necessary to drive positive change. His vision, trust, he listens, he's authentic, he has integrity, and he has hope and optimism. He's a world-class leader for this world-class organization. So Peter, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to be with the Chancellor's Council Executive Committee, and I'm going to ask you a few questions in a minute.
Great to be with you, Chancellor, and with the whole group tonight.
Thanks. All right, we're going to start with the most obvious question probably, and that's about cancer care in the COVID era. So, you've got thousands of immunocompromised patients, and how to care for them when a global pandemic hits, ensuring the safety of your patients in the hospitals and your staff. Talk about what this was like at MD Anderson and how you and your team and all the physicians and the nurses and everyone else managed this so successfully.
Well, you're right, Chancellor. This was indeed a very, very challenging time for us and for our patients. And as you know, and as everyone has experienced, we were all dealing with a once-in-a-century pandemic and so many unknowns. While we all faced some form of anxiety, we knew that the fear and confusion that our patients were feeling were amplified as they dealt with the reality of a cancer diagnosis, along with possible concerns over delays in treatment and procedures, not to mention the concern of how the virus itself might impact their immunocompromised systems. For us, we took an approach that might be described as proactive and bold, but necessary to protect our patients. This really involved a focus on communication as a priority and the understanding of the human impact associated with the pandemic on cancer patients. So in the first several weeks, now a year ago, we made a series of operational changes designed to fortify our campuses and to reduce the possibility that our patients could be significantly adversely impacted by the pandemic. We limited access points. We reduced the number of on-site employees from 16,500 to 6,500 by 10,000 individuals. We implemented screening and masking, launched virtual care. We implemented PPE and testing protocols. We expanded our operations over time and space so that we were working on the weekends and in the evenings. One of the most difficult decisions that we made was to limit visitors. And that I personally found to be a very difficult decision because over my 20 years as a physician at MD Anderson, caring for cancer patients and building close relationships with their families, I have seen firsthand how important the presence of family members are in the cancer journey. And I knew that this would be very, very difficult for our patients, their families, and for our staff. It was very important for us to find a way to reduce all possible exposures for the patients, which we recognize are the largest immunocompromised cancer patient volume in the world. So as we navigated this transition, we really ensured that we could do so with compassion and empathy, using smart devices to connect families with patients by phone or video. And through these efforts, Now, we've been able to achieve what we believe is one of the safest environments in the world for cancer patients during the pandemic. Our infection fatality rate from COVID in our cancer patients is 2.8%. And that compares to 21.1% in the meta-analysis that's been done. So on the basis of that data and our experience with infection control and prevention in our patients, we really believe that we've created the safest environment for cancer patients in the world during the pandemic. That's something that we're very, very proud of.
Thanks. Thank you, Peter, for that. So I had the privilege, the opportunity to meet with Peter within the last couple of weeks about the new strategic plan, and he unveiled it to the advisory board at MD Anderson. The high touch, high value cancer care, increasing community access, encouraging high impact research. So tell us a little bit about this, Peter, about what the future looks like for MD Anderson and what kind of strategies you're putting in place to take it there.
Well, that's right, Chancellor. We just unveiled our new strategy on the 28th of January, and this is such an exciting time for us at MD Anderson. Our strategy is really designed to extend what we think of as the profound legacy of our predecessors and to build on the successes and enable us to, as we say, and as we've described, maximize our impact on humanity to finally end cancer. This was guided, the process itself, by a gold standard strategic planning framework and driven by an inclusive process with input from thousands of our employees and, of course, from our gifted and talented faculty. And with this plan, we've created 3 interrelated strategic themes that we describe in single words: reach, breakthroughs, and value. And these serve as the framework for 23 key decisions that we made together. These decisions really create a prioritization and planning framework, a blueprint for a series of signature priorities, a master facilities plan, and a comprehensive fundraising campaign that will propel our future. This is very special to us because really for the first time, MD Anderson has adapted a Fortune 50 strategic planning framework to an academic environment. We've aligned and prioritized our work around these interrelated themes. We've created a series of transformative partnerships with our community and with academic and industry collaborators. And very important to me and to our organization and to our future, we've really taken a proven execution framework and hardwired it to the strategic plan itself. And I believe this will allow us to make and advance discoveries while sharpening our focus on the unique needs of Texas. I think all of us here tonight know that Texas is growing in so many ways. Important things such as education and healthcare are going to be so important to our economic future. MD Anderson wants to be a big part of that. So hopefully you can imagine how excited we are as we come together to work as a team to finally end cancer. And I'm really looking forward to coming back and sharing our progress in the years ahead.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do that. You know, I think everybody in the CCC that's watching can understand why I take advantage and leverage Peter's leadership. He's not only a great cancer doctor and a great leader for the science and the patient care that goes on there, but he's a real student of leadership and management. And so how they did their strategic planning is a great departure from how a lot of academic institutions do it, and he enlisted some of the most thoughtful people in the world really to help them with it. So he's been a great source, a partner of mine. I couldn't be happy to have him as a partner. And one area where MD Anderson's been a particular leader was in about protecting their technology, protecting their intellectual property, protecting the research that is so valuable from all kinds of folks, whether it's foreign actors or simply criminals that are trying to make money off of MD Anderson talent and intellectual property. Peter, I think you've thought about this as much as many academic leaders in the country. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about kind of what the trade-offs are and what kinds of steps you take to to make sure that the people of Texas are benefiting and the people of the United States are benefiting from the kinds of investments that they've made at the people at MD Anderson?
Well, Chancellor, that's an excellent question. It's something that we talk about all together as a group of presidents and with you all the time. As we navigate a future, we want to work together to ensure that the work of our gifted and talented faculty, the intellectual property that is created, which is actually the legal property of the regents of the University of Texas, is enhanced, supported, and protected. And as we do that, we have to realize the realities of the world that we live in today, and that our number one status makes us a target. We have vast troves of data with patient data, including royalty, VIPs, and others that outside actors, including cyber criminals and nation states, would like to have access to. We have vast troves of research data, including intellectual property, new drug designs, that other individuals, groups, and nation states want access to. So we've taken a number of precautions to really understand the realities of that and to create a culture within the organization that is anchored to our core value of safety. We all want to protect what we have, which are resources of the citizens of Texas, and to do so in ways that allow us to enhance collaboration. Much of this requires us to understand the importance of immigration, of international collaborations, and our ability to foster the right balance so that we're ensuring that we foster an environment that creates, in our case, an Office of International Collaboration to ensure that we can put structure, discipline, and a degree of protection in our international partnerships. And so by really understanding the risks and by elevating and enhancing the opportunities, we believe we can really do the right things for Texans as we think about the future in the world that we live in today.
Yeah, that you have done as good a job, I think, an extraordinary job of this as of anyone I've seen across the country. And as you well recognize and the presidents do, we want the United States to be a talent magnet. We've benefited tremendously over the last 50 years from people coming to this country to go to school, to make discoveries, to work and lead companies. And so it's so important that we get this balance right to eliminate as much of the risk while still getting as much of the benefit. Now, I want to CCC members, if you have questions, I think you can use the chat button at any time and send them in and I'll see them. So I'm going to keep going because there's a lot I want to know from Peter. But if you have questions, I'm also delighted to throw those in. So in the video, Peter, we saw a powerful data point, which is almost unbelievable, that MD Anderson was involved in the development of more than 56% of all cancer drugs approved by the FDA for clinical use. It's astounding. And taking a potential new drug from the lab to the bedside is really a long and arduous process. And I know you are thinking about with your team ways to try to streamline that, which if the standard is now the new COVID vaccines, I'm hoping we can do a lot of streamlining across the spectrum. But say a little bit about that and what your therapeutics discovery division is doing to try to make this possible.
Well, indeed, MD Anderson's contributions to science are really outstanding. And we always talk about the bench to bedside paradigm, but I think we might think of it at MD Anderson as bench at bedside. And that really enables us to accelerate translational science, which really means taking observations that come from basic science and translating them into clinical innovation and new drugs, new ways of treating patients. Our therapeutics discovery division plays a very important part in that role. And MD Anderson has had the ability to assemble a team of individuals that come from the pharmaceutical industry that work together in teams and help us to develop small molecules, antibodies, and new drugs that we can put into clinical trials at MD Anderson. When we have this as an institutional asset, it creates opportunities for us to create new partnerships with pharmaceutical companies. And I know you're well aware of some of the important relationships that we've established with industry through a new paradigm for interaction between academic organizations and industry partnerships. This really enables us to really assemble a critical mass of individuals that are focused on one goal, ending cancer, and to do so in ways that really allow us to bring together the research talent and the clinical talent that we have at MD Anderson. That fusion of the research mission and the clinical mission is something that's very unique to MD Anderson. In my experience at the #2 Cancer Center in New York, their approach is very different. They have what might be described as silos of excellence with a complete separation of Memorial Hospital and the Sloan Kettering Institute. We do it totally differently in Texas, and we've got the full integration of our research mission and our clinical mission. And you see that translated into outcomes that the FDA understands and appreciates.
It's simply remarkable. And I know the people of Texas are incredibly proud of MD Anderson and what it represents. But I doubt that very many people know just the incredible reach and that last statistic, which is just astounding.
Well, I think what it means, Chancellor, is that patients today at MD Anderson are receiving drugs that will be approved by the FDA next month and next year. And that's why they're coming to us.
Yeah, exactly. It's an enormous advantage, both for the patients and for our cancer center. So typically, and we all know people who have received a diagnosis of cancer, and then they want to come to MD Anderson, and we hope they can. But you're really, if you had your druthers, it wouldn't be starting at the point that somebody's had a diagnosis. Because like all areas of medicine now, and cancer perhaps being the most important area, there's a new focus on prevention and the platform for that. And so, talk a little bit about what you're doing in that realm to try to reduce the numbers of people who get a diagnosis and then come to MD Anderson.
Our prevention focus is embedded into our mission statement. And that really drives the 40-year history that we have with a sharp focus on the science and what we call the focus on interventions that have scalability, the implementation science that goes along with taking ideas and concepts and approaches and scaling them up to large populations. So as we do that, we really recognize that today, if we could just deploy what we know works today, things like smoking cessation, vaccines, obesity control, exercise, and diet, we could prevent 50% of cancers. So if we think about that in US terms, this year, more than 1.8 million Americans will receive a diagnosis of cancer. If we simply deployed at scale what we know works today, we could reduce that number to 900,000. That would be phenomenal. In fact, when you look at the impact of COVID on our country right now, think of what we could do if we could just work together to advance prevention. As we do that, we know that we've got to move to scale up prevention and think about population health and looking at health outcomes for entire populations. And that's some of what we have built into our strategic plan as we think about the important aspects of prevention and population health for the future of Texas.
About population health and what you're doing with UT Health.
That's right. We're looking closely at how we might bring our prevention program closer to the University of Texas School of Public Health. And that might create real synergies that would really allow us to attract graduate students, do different types of research, and very importantly, put implementation programs in at scale across populations in the multi-campus platform that the school has.
So you have partnerships that help you accomplish, I think, some of your prevention work, your awareness work. And people in Houston probably know that the professional men's and women's soccer teams, the Dynamo and the Dash, are affiliated with MD Anderson and its campaign now. You think these efforts are successful?
Absolutely. Our partnership with Houston Dash and Dynamo has provided us with a chance to reach even more people in our local community, as well as across the nation and around the world. Prior to the COVID pandemic, we had events with the mascots and the players, game day signage, public service announcements that educated Dynamo and Dash fans. And when we think about the relationship, I think about it as a mission on a jersey. If you've seen their jerseys, Chancellor, you can see our brand across the front of their jersey. Their television broadcasts reach 190 countries. And the Dynamo also has their own YouTube channel. Their social media reach, their diverse strategic demographic, and the growing Houston presence make them just a terrific partner for us. And it dovetails so well with our strategic goal to build on our very, very valuable brand and to elevate MD Anderson and hashtag end cancer as a global cause.
So, Peter, I don't know if you agree with me about my sort of metaphor of COVID, being just smashing time, compressing the time. But so one of our members, Nancy Cutler, asks, post-pandemic, what lessons and best practices will MD Anderson continue? Things it learned here during this time compression.
That is a terrific question. And I think there are two big areas that will be transformational for us. One is virtual care. We're just scratching the surface now. We're closing in on 200,000 visits that we've done using virtual care. And now we're beginning to catch our breath and think about how will we use virtual care in the future. We think about it in terms of how we'll approach access differently with virtual consults and pre-visit consultation with patients. We think about how it will transform clinical care and clinical trials in cancer and how it will transform our ability to look at cancer survivorship. We're also thinking, as is the case in multiple industries, about the future of work. And during the pandemic, we had a large proportion of our employees, over 30%, working remotely. And we now believe we've got an internal team working on the future of work at MD Anderson, where we've set a target, we believe, that 30% of our workforce could work in a hybrid form in the future. And so while many people think of work from home, we're also thinking of WFA, that's work from anywhere. And we're realizing there could be opportunities for individuals to work for MD Anderson who don't have to relocate to Houston. So conceptually speaking, if you were, for example, a data scientist working in our Data Science Institute, well, perhaps you could live in London or Singapore or Seattle and come to Houston periodically. So we believe that the pandemic, as well as the future of work and virtual care, will transform MD Anderson in very, very significant ways.
So I'm almost embarrassed to ask this question, but I'm forced to because somebody put it on my list, and I know we even have a photograph to accompany it. But I will say that there are healthcare heroes working at MD Anderson and our other health institutions every day. And this pandemic, I think, has demonstrated to Texans just how important it is to have sort of the cutting edge health research and patient care in our state. But aside from those healthcare heroes, I understand that you were actually visited by actual superheroes. Superman, Batman, Iron Man. I don't even know who Iron Man is. So what's this about?
Well, Chancellor, I have this date in my calendar every December when I look out my window and I can see superheroes scaling our 25-story patient tower to wash the windows dressed up as Batman and Superman and Iron Man. You can imagine what kind of a surprise this is for our pediatric patients at the MD Anderson Children's Cancer Hospital. And it's exciting for our teams because they can see the impact that this has on our young cancer patients as they sit in their rooms and they're waving to the superheroes and enjoying what is really an extraordinary sight as they see literally Batman outside their window. It's a special moment for us to share before the holidays. And I think with everything happening this year, it was extremely heartfelt to see this tradition carried on. And Batman and Iron Man didn't need a mask. They already had one.
Thanks. So here, a question from a CCE member, Fred Ferris, who is also on the coordinating board for higher education. This is a great question because it addresses something that we have talked about as a priority in the UT system and had discussions with our board about the burnout, physician burnout and other healthcare worker burnout. And I have to think that, like everything else, that was probably accelerated during this pandemic when people really stepped up and worked beyond even their normal commitment, where we've seen and others around the country have seen a great deal of burnout among physicians and other healthcare workers. What are you thinking about that, and what are you and your team doing to try to address that?
That's such an important topic, Chancellor, and we spend a tremendous amount of time and effort proactively looking at the issue of burnout. As we think about it, especially rolling into the pandemic, two things were first notable. It's important to recognize that this is not confined to physicians. It really affects all healthcare workers in all roles. That includes pharmacy, social work, nursing, transport, a variety of different components of the care team. The second thing is that as we saw the pandemic unfolding last year, in January, I called our CHRO, Shabu Varghese, and I said, this is going to be very stressful on our workforce. We need a tool to measure stress in the workforce. And so we put into place survey tools so that we could dynamically measure burnout and stress in the workforce as the pandemic evolved. Those surveys drilled down on how employees were feeling, and we communicated to them that we really understood that this was stressful for them. And as I mapped out the communication goals for our workforce, I wanted to ensure that they understood that my organization has a plan and I know my role in it. My organization has adequate PPE and I know my role in stewarding that PPE. My organization knows how stressful this is for me and my family. And we focus on those things by putting in a whole series of programs, supports, communications, ramping up our employee assistance program, and working hard on the important mental health issues that have come to light during the pandemic. One of the most important things that we need to do as a society is to destigmatize mental health so that we all understand that at different points in time throughout all of our lives, we're all going to experience symptoms of mental health issues. We shouldn't be hiding that. We should be speaking openly about that. And as an employer, we should have support systems in place that allow us to support our employees through the stress of the pandemic. As we did our employee engagement survey just a few weeks ago, we had the survey running through the deep freeze, and we were anticipating that this might impact our response rate. To our surprise, Chancellor, we had a 91% response rate with over 20,000 of our employees completing the employee opinion survey. It has detailed questioning on burnout, and we're looking forward to a rich data set that we will get from that employee opinion survey. I've signaled to the workforce that employee engagement is one of the most important KPIs that our leadership team looks at. And as you know, that engagement translates into an increased emotional connection between the employee and the organization that results in increased discretionary effort at work. I want an engaged workforce. I want a workforce that feels the arms of MD Anderson around them and their family.
I think you can all get an idea here of why MD Anderson has been recently ranked among the best places to work in the country, and how Peter's been so successful at dealing with some cultural issues, some challenges that all large organizations face, but really thoughtful about this. So this may be the last question, and it's from Bob Shepard, and it's one that I think about from time to time. For instance, right now, looking at your screen behind you with cancer with a red line through it. So what if you all accomplish your life's goal and eliminate cancer? What's next? What happens then with MD Anderson?
Well, let me say, Bob, that would be a fantastic place for us to be in. I would like nothing other than to turn our organization into a prevention shop. And we've got a good head start on that with our prevention mission. If we succeed in ending cancer, then MD Anderson will become the #1 cancer prevention organization in the world.
Great, great, good. That's something we can all hope for, and I think we'd all commit to find some things for you to do if you're successful in ending cancer. That would be a great problem for us to have. So while I said we were going to end with that one, we have one more, and no meeting would be complete without a question from Gordon Appleman. So thank you, Gordon. Gordon's asking for you to say a little bit about how MD Anderson collaborates with other UT institutions.
Great question, Gordon. Let me give you 3 compelling examples. I was describing a moment ago the collaboration between ourselves and the University of Texas School of Public Health right next door that Professor Colasurdo is really in charge of. We've got great conversations going on for 18 months now, bringing our prevention mission close to the School of Public Health. And I know you'll be hearing more about that in the weeks to come. Our phase 1 program that studies new drugs has a unique partnership with the Dell Medical School, with UT San Antonio, UTMB, and MD Anderson, forming a collaboration between UT institutions, taking early stage drugs in phase 1 trials out onto a platform that involves the UT system. It's an excellent example of phenomenal collaboration between cancer drug researchers that has benefit and allows phase 1 drugs coming from MD Anderson to go into clinical trials in San Antonio, in Galveston, and in Austin. We're also building some research collaborations with our colleagues at UT Austin. One of the most impactful has been around data science, when we know that UT Austin has phenomenal capabilities in computational methods and high performance computing. So we've been thrilled to put together a partnership that brings together the Odin Institute, the Texas Advanced Computing Center, and MD Anderson, where we're bringing the phenomenal capabilities of the university faculty around computational science together with the troves of data at MD Anderson that I was talking about, and the new cadre of data scientists that we're attracting to MD Anderson. The chancellor had an opportunity to see some elements of that collaboration last fall. We've got joint grants now that have funded 5 research projects, bringing together researchers from UT Austin and MD Anderson around this data science and oncology collaboration. So those are just 3, I think, amazing examples of the collaboration that we're building. And I think, as I've said to the chancellor many, many times, I would like my tenure of leadership at MD Anderson to be associated with collaboration. And hopefully that's what we can talk about in future sessions like this.
That would be great, Peter. And I think all of us really value that commitment of yours. I think perhaps the first meeting that we had together, you told me that the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center is a Texas institution first. And you're interested in serving the people of Texas, and that means by collaborating with other of our institutions. And I did enjoy the visit to the computing center and Odin. I don't have the slightest idea what they do there with computational science, but I know they're really smart people, and I have confidence it's going to be really valuable. So Peter, imagine now that everybody's applauding. We're going to call this interview to a close, and I'm sure they are. And I thank you very much for being with us, for all the exciting things you're doing at MD Anderson, and for the great leadership you're providing for it. So thanks, Peter, and we'll be back again for a follow-up. Thanks.
My pleasure, Chancellor. It's a privilege to work for you and the citizens of Texas.
Thanks a lot, Peter, and it's a privilege of me to try to keep up with you.